All right. Um, Trying this out for the first time. I've got so this is just student Joe talking for a minute. Hi, how are you? I hope everything's going well. Um, I'm enjoying the class, and thank you for putting up the videos you do each week. It helps a lot. I'm not great with online schooling. Um, I struggle with being self-disciplined enough to take online classes, but the availability is nice, or the schedule opening. Anyway, so this is going to be my lesson plan my lesson plan video for the lesson plan I turned in last week. I'm recording a Zoom call, so I'm hoping that, and I'm doing this because I've got um, a worksheet that I would give to the students. And so I just want to share that as I'm talking about it. If I can figure it out, then I will share it. If I can't figure it out, either way, it'll be attached to, uploaded and attached to my lesson plan video. So you should see two attachments to that when you go to check it. The attachment of the recording of this, and then the attachment for the student's assignment. Been spending a lot of time with my buddy, the same one I'm going to be observing in his classroom, the teacher at Bennett. He lives right across the street from me. I've been spending a lot of time with him. Been learning a lot, and it's awesome. It's really exciting. So I'm probably going to botch this. It's my first lesson plan. I haven't had a chance because of that whole fiasco. I haven't had a chance to be in the classroom with him, observe him yet. So my lesson plans are kind of going off what I remember combined with what he's teaching me about them. All right. So, sorry, let me to that. I think it's this one. Okay. Hello, class. I hope everyone's had a good day. Um, Welcome to U.S. history. Uh, I'm your teacher, Mr. Capone. Um, and today's class is going to be on Unit 1 out of our text, European exploration. So this, just a second here. Okay, so sorry about that. Yeah, so this class is U.S. history. What we're going to be talking about today, since we're starting the year out, is um, the first cultures, early cultures. Kind of talk about how who they were, um, what some things they experienced. Um, Talk about some, then kind of start talking about some old world, new world things as we get to Europeans, or the old world travelers, or the old world travelers coming over to the new world, the Americas. Um, how both the travelers and the um, indigenous natives changed because of these interactions between the two worlds. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, and then we'll kind of slingshot from this into U.S. history. This is important, and I like to start with this because it. I believe that in order to better understand U.S. history, it helps to understand world history, world civilization. So again, that's what we're going to be talking about today. This is probably going to be the only class that we're talking about like we're dedicating time to talk about world history rather than US history. Now, as we go through this, there's a lot of information we're going to cover today, but at the same time, there's a lot of information that I'm not including in this. Honestly, each of these slides that we're going to go over today, I could put a class together for each of the slides. There's so much information when, but that's not the point. The point is a brief understanding. We're going to be skipping some hundreds of years at a time when we're covering this stuff about world civilization, just to get those, what I believe, key points to help better understand US history. This, again, it's a lot of information. We're going to be moving fast. Please stop me. If anybody has any questions, we're going to be doing our warm up. Then we're going to be going through the slides, learning about the topics covered today. I've got some group activities set up for us, and yeah, hopefully everybody leaves here today knowing a little bit more than what they did yesterday or what they did before they walked in the room. All right, so starting with the warm up. Warm up question, if everyone will look at slide 1. It's, what are the 4 different question types you will be required to answer on the APUSH exam on May 6th? So this entire class is to pass, is kind of built around that test, that exam on May 6th. So even though this is, the beginning of the year, it's our second time getting together, I think it's important that we focus on that long-term goal, focusing on the long-term goal and making sure we're hitting those short-term goals in between. That's how we end up on top and moving on. This this warm-up's important because that exam is going to have specific types of questions. Now, the content of the questions we will cover through this class. The structure of the questions, the understanding of each type of question, that can be a little bit tricky. So we're going to start talking about that now, acknowledging it now. So that way, once May 6th comes, hopefully we'll all be old friends with these types of questions, and everybody will be having a good time. So everybody, go ahead, take a few minutes, and go ahead and answer that warm-up question. What are the 4 different types of questions? What are the 4 different types? What are the 4 different question types you will be required to answer on the APUSH exam on May 6th? And student Joe talking here again to, I guess for the sake of time, there's going to be a few points through my lesson plan that I'm going to say, it's okay, go ahead and work on this, go ahead and work on this, spend a few minutes on this. I'm not going to wait all the minutes. I'll kind of like give the instruction, all right, guys, take 5 minutes. I will make sure I give a time frame each time and explain it, but I'm not going to sit here and wait another 4 minutes in silence or maybe rambling. So I'll be, each time after this, I'll kind of pause and then I'll pick it back up as if whatever amount of time I've dedicated has passed. Same thing goes for when I'm going to be asking students to answer questions. I might play out like I'm actually getting some answers, but I'll just be giving the answers ultimately. So, all right, so that's 5 minutes. Let's go ahead and let's talk about these the 4 different question types. Is anyone able to name the 4 types of questions that you'll be required to answer on the A push. All right. Correct. Multiple choice, short answer, long essay, and document-based questions. So, everyone in here is kind of familiar with multiple choice. I can tell you that the multiple choice questions on this exam, which, side note, I don't make any of these questions. I don't write anything on this exam. This is all provided to me. But with that being said, I'm sure everybody has experienced the generic multiple choice questions where, if it's 4 possibilities, maybe 1 or 2 of them are viable, and then 2 to 3 of them are completely ridiculous, kind of rule themselves out. That is not going to be the case on this. So you guys are going to have to start getting used to, maybe you already are, but getting used to multiple choice questions that are more of a challenge. Each of you could potentially be looking at the multiple choice questions on this exam when it comes up, and you could be looking at 4 very possible answers. 4 different possibilities. Each one of them seems to be an answer for its question. So you guys have got to learn how to find the best one, how to, kind of analyze, take apart the questions, analyze, take apart the answers, the answer options, and then find your way to the best fitting answer for that. Next one, short answer. This is going to be, a paragraph, maybe 2 paragraphs on, answering whatever the question is about it. Grammar, spelling, punctuation, all these. No, this is not English class, but this is history class, and a lot of history we spend with documents. We spend time writing, we spend time reading. So, all of that will come into account when those questions are being graded. Long essay. All of you, I'm sure, this is an AP class, I'm sure all of you are familiar with essays. You've experienced them, you've learned about them. You will have one on a test. So if you haven't had an essay on a test yet, you will May 6th. So, get familiar with essays, understand them, be able to write them in, matter of minutes rather than days. And then document-based questions. Which is, we're going to touch on a little bit of each of these today. Document-based questions is, what you'll need to talk about the different types of documents there are. Maybe why each type of document has a use. Maybe what sets a type of document apart from another. So I hope everybody got those answers. If you didn't, jot them down, because these again, these are important. This whole class built around that end goal, passing that exam on May 6th. All right, and then if you'll go to slide 2, it's just, there it is. Period 1, chapter 1. Hopefully everyone has had time to read chapter 1. That was assigned homework from our first class the other day. If you haven't yet, please make sure you do so. This class will make a whole lot more sense if you do the reading. And then moving on to slide 3, early civilizations of the Americas. Now you guys are going to see some blanks on this slide. Kind of keep focus, pay attention through this, and you'll be able to fill them in. I want you guys to try to go ahead and catch the information when I'm giving it to you to fill it in. But before we move on from after some of this information is covered, I'll point it out to make sure everybody gets it. So early civilizations of the Americas, blank in Peru, blank in Central America, and blank in Mexico, shaped stunningly sophisticated societies that thrived thousands of years before Europeans ever sailed the Atlantic. By the time Europeans arrived in the Americas by the early 1400s, North America alone had over 40 distinct tribes that fostered their own traditions and languages. So can anybody take a guess at those three blanks? Maybe what anybody familiar with who the three early civilizations of America are? Give you a little hint there. Each blank is a different civilization. Go ahead. Very good. All right. Yes, the Incas in Peru. Inca. That's Incas. Incas. Mayans in Central America. Mayans. Mayans. And the Aztecs in Mexico. Aztecs. Aztecs. So Incas in Peru, Mayans in Central America, and Aztecs in Mexico shaped stunningly sophisticated societies that thrived thousands of years before Europeans ever sailed the Atlantic. So let's talk about this a little bit. That is something. So, I mean, you've got what seem to be quite a bit of people just surviving, doing their thing. And they're fine. I'm sure there's things of convenience that they didn't have, right? We're talking a long time ago. But as far as their necessities, what they needed, they were doing it. You know, I don't even think there was Google back then. So the moving on. We're going to talk about a little bit about diversity, uniqueness. Um, and sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Um, yeah, uh, these three different cultures, the Incas, Mayans, Aztecs, they were all doing their thing in America, in the Americas. Um, they were getting by, and then all of a sudden, one day, bunch of people show up, kind of disturb that. Anybody in here ever watched the movie Pocahontas? That's a little crude, but uh, um, not too far off for a Disney movie for being historically accurate. Huh? Um, yeah. So going on, how were they surviving? Let's start with food. That's pretty necessary if you want to survive. They had different kinds of food. They were the indigenous people, the indigenous natives were they were hunters, they were gatherers, and if you're obtaining food different types of ways, you're going to have different methods. They had farming. Um, and more specifically speaking, they developed a farming process known as three sister farming. Is anybody, let's see, anybody able to tell me what three sister farming is? Yeah, no, it's not a very popular thing talked about, not a common thing talked about. So three sister farming, um, it was a farming process that used the stalks of the maize. Is anybody able to answer what maize is? Right. Another name for corn, or I guess their version of corn. I guess our corn's GMO now, right? Um, yeah. So three sister farming was a farming process Native Americans developed. They used the stalks of the maize to support the growth of beans and surrounded the maize mounds with squash to supply moisture and nutrients to the soil. Together, these crops helped each other grow, and at harvest, the yield of product was increased. So, for many tribes in Americas, maize was grown and mastered to allow a sustained food source that contributed to the growth of civilization building across the continent. And then I did this one backwards. I should have talked about the maize first and explained that, and then moved on to Three Sister farming. But yeah, so these Native Americans, they were doing it up. They were not just surviving; they were thriving. All things considered, they discovered that their farmers discovered that hey, we're growing some maize over here. We've got some beans going over here. We've got some squash going over here. What if grew them together? What if what if we could use each of these to kind of make this better? This is the kind of thinking that was going on. These natives, they used what they had, every bit of it. So coming up to, if you look at slide 5, so this is going to be the first part to the assignment that I've sent each of you. This is going to be on the assignment. At the top of it, New World Beginnings, period 1, chapter 1 assignment, question 1 through 3, refer to the following image. And if you notice, that image on the assignment is the same image on this slide. So, I want everybody to go ahead. Each of you take about 5 minutes to look over this document, look at the first 3 questions on the assignment, and answer them. This is an individual. Effort. We're not going to be pairing up, grouping up, or anything like that yet. So each of you take the next 5 minutes and go ahead and do that. Look over the document. I want you to analyze this, pick it apart. Understand it. Take this time to understand it, and then look at the first 3 questions on the assignment and see if you can answer them using this. All right. And again, I'm not going to wait the 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and proceed as if that time has gone by. All right, good. So that's 5 minutes. Now everyone go ahead, and there's 2 of you at each table. So go ahead and the 2 of you work together. Compare answers. Talk to each other about your thought process to get the answers. Tell each other, explain to each other how you each analyzed this document and came to the conclusions that you did. And we'll say we'll give this one 2 minutes. All right, everybody go ahead, pair up with the other person at your table, and let's do it. 2 minutes has passed. All right. So what have we got? So what type of, let's see, hang on, sorry, give me just a second. All right. So first off, what kind of document is this that we're looking at here? What kind of document? Like, okay, so is it a excerpt from a writing? Is it a photograph? Correct, it is a painting. It's important that you guys specifically see that it's a painting, or see that it's specifically a painting. Now, what there are 2 terms we use to describe documents. Is anyone able to tell me what those terms are? Very good. Primary source or secondary source. Is anyone familiar with these terms now that I've said them? Maybe it's rung some bells. No? Okay, that's all right. So primary sources are usually more trustworthy. because they were made at the time of an event. Um, so, a primary source describes an event, and it was made at the time of the event by someone with firsthand knowledge or experience with the event. Whereas secondary sources, they're created after the fact, which, if they're created after the fact of an event, it kind of leaves what happened up to interpretation. So with that being said, what is anyone able to answer what kind of or what type of document this is? Secondary. This is a secondary source document. And who can tell me why? Yeah. So that the word circa right up here, artist's rendition of ancient Cahokia on the banks of the Mississippi River, circa 1150. There's a few things in this sentence that kind of point out that this is a secondary source document. First off, artist's rendition. That means this painting was painted by an artist that maybe learned some knowledge about this time or these people, and kind of gave his rendition of what he thinks it was like. So that's probably it's probably far from accurate, right? But even if it's not, even if it's spot on, we can't. It wasn't made at the time of the event by someone that was there, right? Someone that experienced it. The second, something else in here. Is anybody able to point out? Anyone able to point out what else in this statement above the picture, above the painting, is pointing to it being a secondary source, kind of telling on it being a secondary source? The word circa. Circa means, if you had to just define circa in one word, approximately. And if this artist is being approximate, means he doesn't know exactly. So yeah, so secondary source. Let's see. Now who can kind of tell me some stuff about this photo, about this painting? Okay. Yeah, they're working hard. Do you think so? Do you think it looks? Does it? Who thinks they can kind of pick out the overall attitude of the folks in this picture? Does it look like does it look like they're miserable? Does it look like they're just kind of going about their day? Does it look like they're being forced to do any of this work that we see in this painting? I mean, I don't think so. I think, to me, it looks like a bunch of people just kind of going about their day. You've got some folks way in the back here, kind of walking up the stairs. Probably maybe they're helping finish up some construction up there. You got some other folks up here in the forefront of the picture. Kind of, you got a few people over on the left building a house. It looks like you got some kids and folks just kind of hanging out in the middle here. Looks like you got some folks cooking over by those two huts on the right. You got a guy um, tending to some hide, which bonus points. What's hide? Yes, it is the hide. It's from an animal that they hunted and killed, because the natives were incredibly resourceful. They used anything they could as a resource, and they used all of it. Who, can anyone tell me where they think, as far as location of in the Americas, where do you think this is? Can we do that? Doesn't have to be, I don't think we'll get too exact or precise, but I think we get kind of close. Does this look like, it was in, a mountainous area? Does it look like it was in a forested area? Uh, on a beach, maybe in the plains? I agree. Yeah, I think this took place in the plains. To me, that's what it looks like. You don't just kind of, it looks like just kind of like desert almost. They've got some grass growing, right? Like there's water sources. You can see the green on the mounds of earth in the back there. You see the greens up front here, right? They farmed, so it wasn't like they picked some barren wasteland to live. But they also didn't, they also didn't pick the rainforest or set up shop in a forest area. At least these specific folks that this artist painted. All right, we'll move on to slide 6, the age of exploration. So by the end of the 13th century, Christian crusaders were driving further east, conquering the Holy Lands from Muslim control, and at the same time bringing back exotic silks and spices from Asia. Over time, these exotic goods became extremely sought after in the West, and prices for them grew out of control. All right, so now we're kind of getting into the age of exploration. Europeans. So we just finished talking about the folks over in the Americas. Let's bounce over to Europe. Um, Europeans were expanding. They were traveling. They were trading. Um, I just realized I gave you guys an answer there. Exotic silk and spices is what goes in that blank. I'm sure everybody's already realized that. I'm catching up slow. No, but they were exploring. They were doing things. They had trade routes. Um, and this end of the 13th century, they were starting to head out farther and farther east. Um, Now, at the time, the only way at the time is they were these Christian crusaders were traveling east, expanding their explored territories. Um, they found these exotic silks and spices that they never had before. They didn't have from they didn't have these things where they came from. These are new things, and this is part of the excitement of exploring, part of the reason for exploring. Um, so they decided, yeah, man, we got to bring this stuff back. Unfortunately, at the time, the only way to get back was uh, was a long walk, um, and it kind of the this was referred to, this road, this um, trade route that the Christian Crusaders established by bringing back these exotic silks and spices, and sharing them with the people from where they're from. This opened up a trade route. It became demand. It became a demand. The folks, the Europeans were like, "Holy smokes, what is it? Silks. This isn't cotton. This is great. Oh, what is this spice? It's something new to put on. Something new to put on the chicken." But so this road, this trade route, gained or was given the name the Silk Road. And it was heavily traveled. So the age of exploration. Why do we explore? Why do people explore? To find more, to have more, to learn more, to see more, um, to control more, maybe. All right, and go into slide 7. So age of exploration continued. As prices for these goods became too costly, European distributors began to look for a cheap way to import Asian exports. So again, walking up and down this road, taking this long walk from where they were to all the way to Asia, you're talking about walking across countries. Okay, now that's a little bit more. It seems a little bit more extreme maybe today than it did back then. Um, maybe because back then they didn't know about cars. They knew about feet, maybe boats, maybe horses. That was it. That was it. If you were planning a big trip, you're probably just a good chance you were sailing. Not walking. But so European distributors started thinking like, man, this takes a long time. This is expensive. We got to figure something out. We got to figure out something that's faster and cheaper. All right. And so during the 1400s, the Portuguese developed a new type of sailing vessel known as the caravel that could sail more closely into the wind and navigate around the south of Africa, opening new trade routes with the east. Um, yeah, and so they put their head to the grind, and they got they developed an entire new way of sailing. I mean, pretty that's pretty cool. Um, to take anything and say, okay, this works really, really good, but I think we can make it better. Um, that's something you guys will find through life. Through life, you'll find things that work good for you. Doesn't mean they can't be better. Doesn't mean they can't be improved. Um, Maybe one of you is, maybe all of you are going to be the ones to improve something that we all use daily. That might be nuts. Um, and yeah, so by doing that, by developing this new type of sailing vessel, um, it allowed them to stop walking and transporting whatever it is they could on foot to now having an entire ship full of people that are not expending their energy um, walking, and they've got all this room to carry stuff back. So not only is the trip going to be less impactful on the travelers themselves or the European distributors, but it's also going to be much more profitable because they're going to be able to. One trip is going to supply them so much more than what it did before. Um, Moving on to slide 8. Now we're going to talk about how uh, what helped these sailing distributors for any travelers, explorers on the seas. Um, what tools do they have to kind of keep themselves straight, keep themselves guided, know where they're going, be able to tell where they've been when they find a new place? How are they going to explain how to get there? Um, Chances are they didn't say, "Hey, we're going to go explore," and sail somewhere, get there, and say, "Oh man, this is great. Let's bring a bunch of stuff back and get back home." And they're telling their people about it, and then it's like, "Oh man, where is that place?" Like, shucks, I don't know. Did anybody write that down? You know, it's no good. But so one of these tools, the astrolabe. Sorry, pronounce it astrolabe. The astrolabe allowed explorers from around Europe to explore new areas of the world and eventually conquer those areas. And then what an astrolabe was, sorry, it was um, it was an ancient astronomical instrument This is its definition. An ancient astronomical instrument that was a handheld model of the universe. What? Its various functions also make it an elaborate inclinometer. So this astrolabe was this little tool they used to kind of help them navigate out there on the seas. Um, it, it used the stars to navigate. Um, it could measure the altitude above the horizon um, of a body of water. They could use this tool to kind of look at the horizon of the direction they're going and measure altitude. That's bonkers. Um, and then other tools they had. The first magnetic compass was invented in Venice, Italy. Once the magnetic compass was invented, explorers felt confident to travel the seas looking to discover new land. So again, here's another example that they had this tool, this astrolabe, that was working for them. Um, people, some people learned about a problem. They discovered a problem, like, hey, we don't know how to figure out where we're going or get back to the same spot. And some of their folks put their heads together and said, hey, here's this stars. This is going to help you track those stars, figure out where you are, write down these things called coordinates using latitude and longitude measurements that this is going to be able to give you if you use it like this. But they said, man, there's got to be a better way. This could be improved. And what did they do? They improved it. They found a magnetic compass, similar to a lot of the compass we see today. You hold a compass in your hand, maybe everybody. A phone, you can download a compass app on your phones. And but either way, compass app or compass in your hand, you hold it, it's gonna, because of the magnets in it and the magnets in our earth, it's gonna tell you where north is. So you can always use it to find your direction somewhere as long as you understand it. And having that, that probably cut down on a lot of the educating. You know, I imagine it took a lot longer to explain to somebody or teach someone how to use the astrolabe than it did the magnetic compass. So of course um, that just helped explorers feel confident. It's like let's see, it's like some of you may be too young to remember maps, but when I first started driving, I had to use maps because GPS wasn't really a thing. So going from an astrolabe to a magnetic compass is kind of like going from a physical paper map to GPS. Not exactly, but I mean that's a similar jump. So could you imagine, you know, these explorers using astrolabe and then hearing like, what do you mean it's an item I just hold in my hand and it tells me what direction I'm facing. Like there's no thought to it. Wow. It's wild. Of course, they still had to use the astrolabe to kind of like map and charter, but they didn't need to use it to figure out what direction they were heading. Oh, so maybe the compass, right? The magnetic compass told them where they're going, and the astrolabe told them where they had been. Both of those are important to know. All right, moving on to slide 9. We've talked a bit about the age of exploration. Yeah, quick recap's probably good. So we've talked about the early cultures, the early civilizations of the Americas. We've talked about some resources they had, uh, how they always were looking to do things better. We looked at our first document together, kind of figured out how to pick that part, analyze it. We talked about the age of exploration, and now on to a pretty popular explorer that a lot of you guys probably know about, if not all of you. If you don't, no big deal, because guess what? We're all here to learn. Christopher Columbus. With the new naval technologies and an increasing need to find cheaper and quicker routes to Asia, Christopher Columbus approached the monarch. I'm going to leave that bold word out. I keep telling you guys the bold word. I have to stop myself. Christopher Columbus approached the blank and convinced them to fund an exploration trip west into the Atlantic in hopes of sailing directly around the planet, arriving safely in Asia. Let's talk about that for a second, because wow, that's a big trip. That's a big trip today. Um, the stars would have to align for me to say, okay, I'm going to jump on this ship for the next few months, and I'm going to try to get to this place. I'm pretty sure, like when I get out of here, I'm supposed to turn left, but I'm pretty sure I can turn right and get there. And it's going to be better. It's going to be better. It's going to be faster. I think so. Anybody in here think they would make that kind of decision, given the access to information they had back then? I mean, this is not too long after word spread about uh, about the advances in exploring and sailing. Although he never found a passage west to Asia, he is credited with the discoveries of the blank, as it is known to Europeans. All right, so is anybody able to tell me what fills that first blank? With new naval technologies and an increasing need to find cheaper and quicker routes to Asia, Christopher Columbus approached the monarchy of Spain. Very good. And convinced them to fund an exploration trip west into the Atlantic in hopes of sailing directly around the planet, arriving safely in Asia. Although he never found a passage west to Asia, he is credited with the discoveries of the New World, as it is known to Europeans. Christopher Columbus, famous for a mistake. Don't ever, I hope none of you guys ever beat yourselves up too badly from the mistakes you make in life. They are inevitable. They will happen. What I try to teach my children is mistakes are okay. You got to do two things with a mistake. You got to fix it. You got to learn from it. Making a mistake isn't a problem. When you start making the same mistake over and over, and we're getting into problem territory. So the next slide, slide 10, is anyone able to tell me what this is? Yep, it looks like it is an excerpt or part of a letter written by Christopher Columbus to Ferdinand and Isabella, to the monarchies of Spain. My apologies. So this is, at first glance, this would appear to be an awesome thing to find, awesome thing to come across if you're learning about this time period, right? You're telling me, I'm in here, I'm talking about the Christopher Columbus and his travels and what he did and all this, and you're telling me I get to read a piece of a letter that he wrote. But as we learned with the first document we looked at today, you cannot always believe what you see. So would anybody like to go ahead and read this? All right. And yeah, so what does this sound like? Does this sound like Christopher was writing about things as they happened? Or do you think he was maybe less than honest with some of these details? Yeah. I mean, let's look at the whole picture. Again, we're analyzing this document, right? So let's look at the whole picture here. Christopher Columbus, he's this explorer that heard about these advances for exploring, sailing, and he says, I'm gonna go to my boss and I'm gonna see if my boss will approve this trip. It's gonna cost a lot of money. It's gonna cost people. I'm gonna need a crew. I'm gonna need all these things. I think it's gonna be worth it. And he goes and he tells his boss, and he finally convinces his boss. It was not a quick thing for Columbus to get the go ahead from the monarchy. It was quite a feat he accomplished, getting approval for this, because again, it was all on a whim. you're not only can not only have this guy that wants to travel, make this long trip, but he wants to do it differently than everyone else is doing it successfully. If something's not broke, do we try to fix it? I don't know. Yeah, so I mean, if now he's writing a letter right now. He's got. I'm sure everybody picked up from reading this. This letter is after he arrived to to the Americas. When he arrived, he was sailing for Asia, uh, and specifically the country of India. And so when he landed here in the Americas, when he found the Americas, it was just kind of like a stumble because he was meaning to get to India, and of course, hence the term Indians to describe the natives of the Americas. But yeah, no. So he's writing a letter to his boss to kind of tell his boss, hey, all that stuff all that money you spent, all those resources you used, all those people that you sent with me. Oh, by the way, a few of them have died because that's what happened during long journeys in this time period. Um, it was a good decision because you can see the first paragraph here. I took what is it? On the 33rd day after leaving Cadiz, I came into the Indian Sea, where I discovered many islands inhabited by numerous people. I took possession of all of them for our most fortunate king by making public proclamations and unfurling his standard, no one making any resistance. All right, there's a couple of things wrong there. Okay, so after 33rd day after leaving Cadiz, you know what? I could believe that. I could believe that to make that sail. Um, came into the Indian Sea. All right, that's not factual because he was not in the Indian Sea. Um, he was popping across the Atlantic there. Uh, or popping across the Atlantic to uh to land. Let's see. So I came into the Indian Sea where I discovered many islands inhabited by numerous people. So these are he first spot he touched down was the Caribbean islands. So he was in the Caribbeans right off of the Americas. Um, I took possession of all of them for our most fortunate king. So I mean, man, he's talking about like he just rolled up on these people. He made it to the place he was going. He did it in record time, 33 days. Um, and he's already claimed a bunch of slaves with no resistance, zero resistance. And it was he took possession of them simply by by publicly proclaiming the king's standard. Um, so he is saying he essentially discovered this place in record time. He went out, he found these people, he made these proclamations, and they just willingly said, "Oh my goodness, we belong to you now. We love this king. He's the best." No, that's not what actually happened, but that's what you're going to tell your boss after your boss has just spent a bunch of money on you, and given you all these things to see if you could do this. And from there, it just goes on. So, now let's see, is anyone able to tell me what type of document this is? Would this be who remembers the two types? Primary source, secondary source. Very good. Which type is this? That's right. This is primary because it was written by a person. It was written about events by a person that was present in the events. Um, but it's not factual. It's full of boo-boos. This was so student Joe now. Um, this slide was supposed to be another group activity. I was going to have them get back together with that partner at their desks and to look over the document, talk about their thoughts about it, and uh, and talk about how we find out if we can trust a document or not. How would we? How could we cite it? And moving on to slide 11, we get into the Columbian Exchange. So this is just kind of a quick shot of the things that, excuse me, that the natives of the Americas, the Indians, agreed to trade with the Europeans. So they were the Europeans that settled over in the Americas were sending all of these items on the left here, the two left lists, back over to Europe. And for each of those, Europe was trading these two lists of items on the right. And let's take a minute and look at some of these because this is very interesting and it's exciting to talk about. So the Columbian Exchange is actually still in effect today. So we're talking about something that was established in the 1400s, 600 years ago. That is bananas. But let's look at some of these things. Does any of these popping out to anybody as strange or maybe surprising? Yep, tomatoes. Tomatoes are surprising because tomatoes came from the Americas over to Europe. Why is that so surprising to me? Because I think Italians. I'm part Italian, and it blows my mind to think that as much as Italians use tomatoes, they only know about them because it was a good that was traded. What? I mean, come on, that's wild. Look at we live on the Eastern Shore. Chickens. We didn't have chickens here. Chickens are like one of the the chickens are a big deal around here, right? Who's heard of Purdue? Tyson. They came over from there. What else came over? That what else can anybody pick out something on the what came from Europe to America that might be surprising? Horses. So I know all for me personally, growing up, I loved playing Cowboys and Indians, and it was a given if mode of transportation ever came into play, the mode of transportation was a horse, maybe a wagon, but that wagon was going to be pulled by horses. Um, so holy smokes! But that's only because the Europeans introduced horses to the natives. Um, wow, it's these things that just happen to become part of their lives because of trade are one of the main points of some of these civilizations now. It's just really cool. Um, Now, something not included on this slide, but it was another thing that was brought from the old world, the Europe to the new world, and that was slaves. Um, not not all things in trade are good, right? Um, yeah. So the Columbian Exchange, it's a trade of goods from the old world into the new world. The new world being North America and South America, the old world being Europe, Africa, Asia, and it's still going on today. See? So now going on to slide 12, titled Conquering the New World. As word traveled back to the old world of possibilities of riches, more explorers began to find monetary support for new travels to the New World. Spain quickly looked to secure exploration rights of the New World by signing a treaty with Portugal that divided the world into two zones of exploration. Blank, remembering, gave the rights to Africa and Asia, gave the rights to Africa and Asia to the Portuguese, and Spain would claim the rights to the Americas. So word gets back, right? Word gets back to Spain that, hey, Columbus found land and it sounds like he found some new stuff. He's found a place we've never been before. So we want this. We want this. The Spain was saying, we want this to be ours. How can we make sure this is ours? How can we lock this down? Because as much as everyone was exploring back then, the the powerful cultures, the powerful civilizations were just as interested in conquering um, places as they were as exploring them. Not everybody, but you know, the lot of mainly the ones calling the shots were concerned with conquering. But yeah, so what Spain did to secure the rights to the New World is they signed the Treaty of excuse me, they signed the Treaty of Tordesillas. That's Tordesillas, Tordesillas, saying, hey guys, we'll give you guys exclusive rights to um, Africa and Asia. We won't bother with that at all. We will not come over and conquer. We won't try to take it from you. That can be all Portugal. We just want you to agree that you're not going to mess with anything, you may find out past that stuff. And this was clever at the time. Portugal was Spain's biggest competition when it came to conquering. So to sit here and Portugal didn't have this information yet. Again, this was it wasn't that, like I said earlier, I'm pretty sure Google didn't exist back then. So everything was word of mouth, maybe a letter written. And so yeah, Spain had this lucked out and had this really awesome information that they capitalized on. And Portugal, they're like, wow, it's they're being presented with this treaty. And I imagine Portugal guys were kind of sitting there like, you guys are serious. You're not going to mess with any of these lands. You'll sign here saying you're not going to mess with any of these lands. We can have them. But you just don't want us to try and conquer land we find out past. We don't even sail that far, man. It's unbelievable. Yes, we'll sign. Kind of like those maybe like those little hidden terms and conditions some of us might be familiar with. Slide 13. Conquering the New World. With the arrival of Spanish blank, they brought with them war, disease, death, and new policies of enslavement known as blank. So these guys just sound like some winners. I mean, I'm going to invite them to my next dinner party. The blank allowed Spanish officials to give natives to Spanish colonists in attempts to Christianize them. In reality, it was used as a form of slavery, so colonists were spared from manual labor. So, with the arrival of Spanish conquistadors, they brought with them war, disease, death, and new policies of enslavement known as encomienda. The encomienda allowed Spanish officials to give natives to Spanish colonists in attempts to Christianize them. In reality, it was used as a form of slavery, so colonists were spared from manual labor. So these guys were they were telling the natives that they wanted to teach them about their ways. They want to teach their people about their people's ways of life, beliefs. They probably really dolled this thing up, made it look really good to the natives, very appealing. They're taking off with their people. It better be a good reason. People that have never left where they were. Um, maybe natives have traveled through waters and whatnot, but I mean, you're talking a voyage. Um, just for the natives to find out when they get where they're going that they're actually slaves and they have no rights, no power, um, not even looked at as human, certainly not treated as human. Go on to slide 14. Throughout the next century, many Spanish conquerors came to the shores of the Americas, toppling existing civilizations while their lust of gold and power continued to grow. Explorers like Cortez, Coronado, and De Soto each conquered more territories and built new civilizations in the name of Spain. In just a few short decades, the native cultures died off from war and disease, losing up to 95% of the original native population. I mean, a lot of stuff we talk about in this class, it can be kind of thought about and um, kind of ponder where would we be if that happened differently, or what would life be like now if this was different in history. You're talking about killing off 95% of a population, 95% of a population. So if there were 1,000 of them, let's say there were 1,000 natives to make the math easy. If there were 1,000 natives, what is that? 950 of them were killed, leaving 50. Could you imagine going from 1,000 people to 50 people? I'm pretty sure that would put them on the endangered species list, but that wasn't a concern at the time. And this is the kind of, this is kind of one of the dark topics of life back then. All right, going on to slide 15. As the Spanish conquered parts of Central and Southern America as the Spanish conquered parts of Central and Southern America, other European countries started to become interested in the northern parts of the New World. Quickly, Spanish explorers began to venture north and claim land from any other nations that might become interested. Yeah, so they made that treaty with Portugal, but maybe there are some other folks on their way over here now, huh? So now, and this kind of shines a light on the exchange of information. Also, information was not nowhere near as easily spread back then as it is today. So the Spanish is taken over, right? They're over in the Americas. They're taking over Central America, Southern America. And now word's getting back to other European countries. And so now other European countries are like, wait, what? They have what over where? That sounds like enough for them to share. And going on to slide 16. Famously, explorers like Coronado conquered northern territories and tortured captured Pueblo natives. After the Battle of Acoma, that's a blank, go ahead and write it in. The Battle of Acoma in 1599, the Spanish severed 1 foot of every surviving Pueblo. Let's talk about that. So this explorer, Coronado, which, if you remember, he was a Spanish explorer, excuse me. One day in the year 1599, Pueblo natives decided they were done with it. They decided they were going to take a stand and fight back against these conquistadors that were taking their people. They said, no, we're done with this. They're making us work. They're taking our people. They're taking our fathers, our men, our husbands, our women, our mothers, our children. They're taking all of our people. They're taking our things. They're not giving us things. These people are only taking. We need to tell them. We need to show them we can handle them. And that would be the Battle of Acoma. Unfortunately for the Pueblo natives, they did lose this. And as a message, as a reminder, never try this again. The conquistadors severed a foot from every surviving Pueblo. That means there were no Pueblo natives with 2 feet. Think about that. Wow. Um, and that's because other people cut 1 foot off of each of them. Yeah, so I mean, then the Pueblos fell in line. They did not try that again uh, for a while. Going on to 17, uh, Pope's Rebellion. Now it looks like it's spelled Popes. Well, it's spelled like it's pronounced Pope's Rebellion, but it's actually pronounced Popes. Pope's Rebellion. The only real success the native population saw against the invading Spanish was at Pope's Rebellion. Pope's Rebellion in 1680, where the Pueblos were able to rise up against the Spanish settlers, killing hundreds and burning Catholic churches, bringing freedom to the area for the next 12 years. Holy smokes. So the Battle of Acoma was in 1599. 81 years later. So these guys took a stand and tried to reclaim their freedom, um, failed, and then 81 years later, they dealt with this, being treated like this by these traveling people for another 81 years before they decided to take a stand again. The Pueblo Revolt holds great historical significance because it helped ensure the survival of Pueblo cultural traditions, lands, languages, religions, and sovereignty. They took a stand. They succeeded this time, and they said, you know what? No, this is who we are. This is our people. This is how we do things, and this is how things will be done where our people are. Um, Man, take some guts. Uh, and they got to keep their stuff. They kept their way of life alive. As time went on, there was moving on to slide 18 now. As time went on, there was this stereotype called the Black Legend, a concept of that Spanish conquerors merely tortured and murdered natives, stole gold, and infected them with smallpox, leaving nothing of benefit. The Black Legend was later used by other European countries as justification when they tried to decrease Spain's power in the Americas. So there started to be, I mean, I guess you could call them rumors because people were spreading them, but they weren't really, I mean, they were true rumors. Spanish conquerors starting to get a pretty bad rap. Um, so with these, like, this Black Legend spreading, um, the Spanish conquerors had kind of been, like, this stigma fell on them that they're nothing but evil. They don't help. They only hurt. They don't give. They only take. Um, we'll find out that followed them around for a while. At one point, it even cost them to lose some support from the Catholic Church. Even after all of the support they gained, discovering the Americas. Um, so now, go ahead, take a minute. This is going to be an individual um, assignment or individual task, and I want everyone to work on the exit ticket. As we discussed last class, the exit ticket is something I will be asking every class, and it will be your ticket to exit my classroom. So these two questions: in which ways did Native Americans change socially, economically, and politically during the first century of European contact in the Americas? Excuse me. And then in which ways, in which ways did Europeans change socially, economically, and politically during the first century of European contact in the Americas? So the first question is, why don't you guys tell me what you learned about how Native Americans changed from the time that European explorers, travelers first set foot on their continent to up until uh, the end of that first century. And then the second one, same deal, but explain to me how Europeans changed. Give everybody a few minutes to do this, and then we'll go over it. All right. So beginning with one, in which ways did Native Americans change socially, economically, and politically during the first century of European contact in the Americas? Go ahead. Native Americans went from their own tribes. So socially, Native Americans went from their own tribes and trading amongst themselves to all of a sudden they have to find their own way to fit this new world that showed up at their old, at their old world doorstep. The Native Americans, to them, their way of life is the old world. It's the only world, and then this new world is at their door. So that's quite a thing to kind of, you're living life, you're doing your thing, your people are doing your thing. All of a sudden, it almost feels like you're losing it all, or how do I fit in? We talked earlier in class about how the Native Americans were completely self-sufficient. They had learned to use the land. They had learned to work the land. They had learned to live off the land. They were doing just fine. But now, all of a sudden, you see them wanting to trade. My guess, and this is just based off of um, not quality of life, but you look at we look at the values that Native Americans had. Um, they didn't, they weren't wanting. I believe they weren't wanting for silk and things like that as much as they. I don't believe they traded because they wanted those things. I believe they were the part of trading, or the bit of them that were enthusiastic about trading. It was probably because it helped them feel like they were keeping their place in this world, like they still belonged. They still had a place to fit into. Economically, trade, um, trading their things for others. Again, to stay relevant. Um, Politically, natives controlled their own tribes until the Europeans found them. After that, they lost any and all power, political power, you could call it, and they'll never be treated as or seen as equals politically by the Europeans. So politically, you could call it political because they were managing their own things, right? The tribes were kind of managing amongst themselves and then working together with, some trade amongst the different tribes. But then it's all taken, and they've got like no power. And so two, in which ways, so those are the points of the first question. Second question, in which ways did Europeans change socially, economically, and politically during the first century of European contact in the Americas? Well, socially, um, Europeans were assuming this new role as conqueror, trying to gain power and possess goods or trying to gain land and possess goods to maintain their power. Um, and unfortunately, they end up falling into the stigma of cruelty because of that black legend. Um, Economically, trading all over the world and becoming an economic powerhouse all through Europe. They got the first jump on a whole new world. We get maybe we get excited if we leave the first comment on one of one of our YouTubers' latest videos. These guys had first jump on a whole world, and they capitalized. They kept the info close to the chest. They strategically kind of manipulated their main competition, Portugal, thinking, making Portugal think like, hey man, we're sorry about how things have gone. We'll tell you what, you guys go ahead, have all this. We're gonna leave you alone. We've been real jerks. You guys are cool. We'll figure it out. We'll go past there. We won't mess with anything before here. We'll go past that and we'll just make do with whatever we find. Chances are we'll probably be coming to you to, maybe trade for some stuff. You'll probably have a lot of things we're gonna need because we're not gonna have them anymore. When in reality it was very much the opposite. And so that that is going to do it for this class. Remember, do your reading. Read chapter 1 if you haven't already. If you have, never hurts to go through it again. Hang on to this PowerPoint slides or this PowerPoint to go over these slides. And yeah, have a great day. Thanks for stopping by.